As Tina introduced, I've been wearing many hats over the years, and I'll be speaking today on collaborative writing and indeed research with Bianca, and more widely with Helen and some others at Tallinn University and the University of Tartu. The topic of the presentation today is balancing resilience and inclusivity. I'll attempt to start sharing my presentation. And let me see now. There we go. This work is based on a project in the Interreg Central Baltic program. So it's more of a regional development topic within this program rather than a research. Bit of a medium-term project of 2 to 3 years. It's called Augmented Urbans on Visionary Participatory Planning and Integrated Management for Resilient Cities with partners all around the Baltic and Nordic region. Very relevant to today's audience. So it is looking at Nordic Baltic experiences of participative planning for urban resilience through nature-based solutions, as Helen already introduced earlier, nature-based solutions. I will go through a typical outline here in this presentation, beginning with the introduction, theoretical background, and so on. Let me get into our overall challenge and approach to this research topic. But first, actually, a little bit more explanation of the Augmented Urbans project specifically. I will try not to repeat it again when it comes up in the presentation, actually in the order. But this is a project with 5 cases involving local actions as interventions for urban renewal. And that's why they are based on nature-based solutions, because they're focused on urban resilience through these small-scale local interventions involving a variety of different types of stakeholders in the local community context and research partners and municipalities. So with that, we are bridging the concepts of urban resilience in urban renewal or regeneration projects specifically, and planning processes, particularly participatory planning, being the main trend in planning towards ever more participative and inclusive processes. So we situate this research in a few challenges. Firstly, the accelerating urbanization and strive towards urban sustainability, as we expect to have more than 70% of the global population living in urban areas. The Nordic and Baltic cases are rather advantageously situated to address urban resilience problems due to the popularity, you could say, of environmental issues, and also the relative development of planning of regimes and political processes, political will, expectation of societal involvement in these processes, especially with the strong democratic conditions of the Nordic countries. So we base this research on the trends of participatory planning and planning for urban resilience. Nature-based solutions are also a main mechanism for realizing urban sustainability and putting into effect or implementing sustainability transformations. And nature-based solutions have been advocated in European development programs and strategies, but also in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and related reports about how to achieve urban sustainability. So nature-based solutions are selected because they are very localized responses and they can address some key challenges like improving the urban environment, addressing climate-related challenges locally, also contextualizing them for the local populations. But nature-based solutions also have the potential to improve human health and well-being, since many of the most important health challenges today are urban challenges or related to urban environment. Even in clean, relatively clean, unpolluted environments, like in the Nordic countries, we have some urban problems like air pollution coming from traffic rather than coming from industry. So it continues to be relevant for urban areas despite the types of, well, in comparison to traditional causes of environmental degradation being related to industrial development or resource use and so on. So while we delve into these topics, we are actually, through the cases, looking at the planning practitioners and their role in these local actions, and specifically looking at their attempts to involve stakeholders in the urban renewal projects that are focused on urban resilience. As I will show through more of the theoretical discussion and the cases, we seek to understand the role of the planner as an agent of transformation. And so we start to develop this concept of transformative planning. The cases in the project are in 5 different locations across 4 different countries. So we've got Cēsis, Latvia, Gävle, Sweden, Helsinki, Finland, and Tallinn and Vimsi in Estonia. And I'll characterize these cases a bit when we get down into the project design and research approach. But I also want to mention, since we are social scientists, we come with a critical approach to the processes that are happening in these locations, especially analyzing the interactions between the planners and the local community. And when we look at urban planning, we note in the literature there's a critique of the tendency to focus on best practices, and rather a lot can be learned by focusing on the failures, limitations, and conflicts, especially when we're dealing with concepts like resilience and sustainability, which, if we see them as master signifiers, they are representing high-level concepts that can be distorted, they can be used differently, and eventually lose their meaning as they become more prevalent or be misunderstood by the people who are attempting to use them. So we also cast this question of sustainability in urban development and in these urban renewal projects. We cast the sustainability into question 2, which similar to as Bianca has just presented, is something that the stakeholders, that the participants also do. And so in being critical, we look for contradictions. From the participative planning side, we are looking at contradictions with inclusivity, and in comparison to some more closed discourses and necessary knowledge for urban renewal projects that's related to scientific knowledge of ecological resilience and understanding of the background of where resilience comes from and who or what in society or the urban context is supposed to benefit from that. So to get back more into our theoretical framework, we're addressing this tension between inclusivity and resilience in these urban renewal projects. So core to this in the local actions is looking at the tendency in sustainable urban planning and development to now transform urban areas from gray to green as the main action for achieving urban resilience. We are looking broadly at green infrastructure and more specifically at nature-based solutions as the core elements of these urban renewal actions. And this, we justify taking this mainly from European policies and strategies for urban development and for health and well-being. These are concepts and actions like tools for implementation that are now deeply embedded into European programs, deeply embedded into the research agendas like Horizon Europe and previously Horizon 2020 for research on urban areas and health, indeed. And this is also part of the European Green Deal, not to mention all of the sustainable development goals that interact directly with these. We can take nature-based solutions at the definition as being actively developed to deal with environmental, social, and economic challenges in a way that is inspired by, supported, or copied from nature. And this is a bit more specific than green infrastructure, which is referring more generally to networks and systems that are on a higher spatial scale, say at the wider urban or regional level, that are providing ecosystem services. And nature-based solutions are those, well, green infrastructure can also be the existing infrastructure, the natural infrastructure, but also green infrastructure is also developed intentionally. But nature-based solutions are more of the actions as we understand them. So they're more active and they are implemented with a specific goal in mind. Then we see there is an emerging literature about participative planning with nature-based solutions specifically. Specifically regarding the success of nature-based solutions to meet their objectives, to achieve some kind of improvement in the urban sustainability and the resilience. Researchers have so far found that participatory planning is a key element, but there is more research needed to know to what degree. So what is the form and the intensity, you could say, of the participatory planning that is required? What level of engagement is needed with the community? What is required of them to do? These are all context-specific questions, so there isn't necessarily one solution or a best practice for putting participative planning into the nature-based solutions projects. And there is also even some literature that suggests that when we have this tension between what the community wants and what is required for a sustainable outcome, then participatory planning can even be detrimental to the NBS project and to the outcome. But more research is needed on this and to understand what degree of participatory planning is needed for the type of intervention being undertaken. We also have, regarding resilience, we have to take into account the historical development of resilience, with resilience research being based on socio-ecological and evolutionary aspects, taking into account hazards and risks, especially now we can see them, we can understand and recognize them being related to climate risks. And then we can take the definition from the IPCC report of 2014. So we understand resilience as being the capacity of social, economic, and environmental systems to cope with hazardous events or trends or disturbances and so on, and maintaining capacity for adaptation, learning, and transformation. So there's a long-term outlook required of this, which is possibly beyond the scope of communities that are being asked to engage in these processes, to legitimize them more as planning processes. And since it's open to this kind of interpretation, then it's crucial to consider the agency and capacities of individuals and communities that are involved in these projects. Let's see, I will try to speed up a little bit because I realize that I have a lot to get through. So I would just like to focus on the point that we have the potential conflict to be aware of and to investigate in these cases, which is about the openness of participation processes. Indeed, with respect to that expectation now of the communities to be involved, to legitimize a process. But we also have what's referred here as the directness of planning for ecological resilience. So in a way, we have bottom-up versus top-down approaches, which are both justified for the means that they're meant to address. From the top-down aspect regarding resilience, it's because it takes into account scientific knowledge and prioritization of different aspects of the intervention versus other things that the community cares about more subjectively. We also extend the notion of transformative agency. As I already mentioned in the introduction, this would be a new direction in planning research, and an extension, possible extension of the role of the planner to develop their transformative agency, which would be their ability to seek out change and to affect change in their local community through the institutions that they're working in. So this calls in a bit of a neo-institutionalist approach, like referring to sociological institutionalism, how actors are working within their structures, maybe subversively, maybe explicitly, maybe with permission, maybe not, to rework the limits, the structural limits of the planning regime, in this case, that they're working in. So now more to the cases. We have, as you already understand, a comparative study of urban renewal projects across 5 countries. It's based on 15 semi-structured interviews, which they found the empirical evidence. So these were done in 3 rounds, 1 in 2019 and 2 in 2020. These were coming back actually to the same 6 planning practitioners over time. So to come back with them over the process of the local actions. And then the data collectors also participated in project meetings, and some of these were also more public meetings where they could make observations. Here you can see a schema of the cases. So in the map on the left, you see the different locations and some keywords describing the types of interventions. And you can also see some photos in the middle showing the sites of the interventions. So if I will start on the top of the photos with Helsinki, it's looking at, actually this one is a bit different from the other cases because this is an inner city case. It's looking at a developed inner city area of Helsinki. It is Teollis Uuskatu, which is a transport corridor. It's a node that's linking 2 areas that are under quite big transformative urban developments, but this corridor in between is it has been quite static and is kind of a place without any identity in the city. So they are adding some green infrastructure, some transport solutions, and aim to make it more of a green transportation corridor instead of being car-based. Then in Gävle in Sweden, we have the example of this traditional landscape in Sweden, which is the dry meadow. So more of a naturalized open green space, replacing the lawns in a residential community. And the aim of that was to increase the biodiversity and environmental awareness in this kind of suburban residential environment. In Tallinn, the concept is of a pollinator highway going through, it's basically a utility corridor with disused rail lines and power lines. So it's already kind of had the characteristic of an abandoned green space in the post-socialist urban landscape kind of context. But it has some different potential competing uses amongst the local community. So there's some green branding involved, and also aims to increase the biodiversity and environmental awareness there. For Česis in Latvia, it's a local action along the riverbank with an aim of increasing the environmental awareness from the perspective of tourism. So positioning this municipality as a more attractive destination. It is outside of the city of Riga. So, well, we will get more into specifics of the interventions a little bit further. But the last one is Viimsi, also in the Tallinn area. It's a traditional summer house neighborhood that has been steadily urbanized over time, and it's still considered to be a very attractive suburban area. And so the aim here is to create more of a defined town center hub with different transportation options and some improvements to the urban space. And here the challenge is setting the expectations with the stakeholders. So I won't go into all of the objectives of each renewal project, but I can take a couple of them. So for Tallinn, just to show you how the cases were more comparably structured. So each of the cases has specific objectives, and we mapped out which were the stakeholders involved. So in Tallinn, the objectives were to further the development of the green mobility corridor, including a new tram line and a light traffic path, and also to transform the core area into an active linear park and a curated environment of biodiverse landscaping, especially that has a positive effect on the pollinators, so species and other types of insects, butterflies, even birds, and so on. The stakeholders involved were the planning board as leaders of the initiative, but others include various governmental institutions, local residents, could say other non-governmental institutions, but public ones, educational institutions being project partners, so especially the University of Tallinn. There's also the state-owned electricity and gas transmission system operator, which obviously has works going through the area according to its prior uses, and Estonian Railways, the same. I will also highlight Česis because it's a little bit different from the others in terms of the issues that they encountered. So their prime objective was to develop the tourism and recreation potentials of the area and to preserve rich biodiversity and diverse landscaping, including a ski resort in the area. So that might be a rare amenity in the Baltics, but also some other riverside hiking trails and things like that. So the lead stakeholder was, again, a planning department, and we had governmental institutions, the private sector, and a similar range as the Tallinn one. Now, I will skip through other particular cases and show us how our analysis went. So we went through the comparative analysis of the cases to highlight participatory methods applied, the resilience enhancing methods, and how the transformative change could be developed in the different cases with transformative change in the planners. So for Tallinn, we outlined specific participatory methods like information sharing, communication, events and activities, branding. There were augmented reality solutions, which was the technical aspect of the project in general to involve augmented and extended reality and other digital solutions. And then we could highlight the transformative changes in comparison between the different cases to come out with some themes, like building the environmental knowledge or improving the legitimacy of the participative process. Then I can summarize these types of participatory methods that were used and the enhancing methods again. So similar to as the ones that I mentioned for Tallinn, there was information and communication sharing and collection of feedback using innovative methods, digital ones, but also traditional non-digital methods. And the resilience enhancing methods were ranging from scientific and technical ones like the biodiversity and pollinator surveys. So some ecological studies of the sites regarding their ecosystem services and environmental qualities. And then others ranging to the political, like developing site management plans or contributing to district plans. And then social ones like gathering general inputs to these types of formal processes. What we found for our general contribution to theory from these is the emergence of some themes, specifically encountering these tensions between the participation and resilience based on cultural values and aesthetical norms, similar to as Bianca has described with the urban gardens in her study before, as well as the neoliberal contested spaces. And we had some institutional divisions and conflicts between different stakeholders and their priorities. Then regarding developing transformative agency, this pertains to the aims of the planning practitioners and the kind of capacities that they developed in themselves through their experiences in these local actions. So first we have gaining legitimacy and stakeholder support, also building environmental knowledge and facilitating conflict resolution. And the reason why we consider these to be developing transformative agency is because it goes beyond what the planner is required to do. And that is what the planner is required to do is often the only thing that they can do with their limited resources and the structures that they're working in, time, and things like that. So we know from other, from the planning literature in general, that planners tend to feel very pressed, that they can become more pigeonholed into the role of checking the boxes to ensure that they do everything that they have to do rather than what they should do or what they want to do regarding the sustainability aims that have become a big motivation for them. We have some pictures and some quotes to share. So about encountering the tension between participation and resilience. Of course, many participants were questioning having ecological resilience as an objective. So a participant from Gävle in Sweden said, "I never thought that this transition goes so deep. There are still some people who are very attached to lawns. They look nice and tidy, and meadows are something scary almost." So there was a resistance to naturalizing lawns. And to some, it could be a very personal a personal issue about questioning their aesthetic values, like Bianca had just described, but also maybe challenging their idea of what kind of micro actions need to be done to promote sustainability or to transition towards more urban resilience. So we did gather examples from the different categories that or analytical themes that emerged from the research. So that's grass and meadows being one related to cultural values and aesthetical norms. For contested spaces in the neoliberal economy, we can highlight the prioritization of land use for purposes like real estate development or infrastructure projects. So that came out in Tallinn, and there have been several large road building projects that were very publicly contested for this reason. So on this disused rail corridor, it's more of a marginal space, but that still occupies a significant area near, well, on the edge of the center of the city. Then for institutional divisions, we have conflicts between different city departments, for example, and between planning departments and other stakeholders in the cases such as in Cēsis, where the stakeholders had the motivation to develop the tourism and recreation possibilities, but the planners actually didn't see the value in that. So there were, that's more of a paradox, you could say, where maybe it wasn't the planners who were seeing these avenues towards increasing the urban resilience, or it could be, as I mentioned before, an issue of their time and resources, and not the planners' personal values, but the structures that they're working in, and whether they can pursue a resilience aim like that. Then just to wrap up in about 30 seconds, we had the same kind of exercise for developing transformative agency. So for gaining legitimacy and support, we can compare economic reasoning, the use of experts, and scale jumping. I would also add the use of scientific knowledge. For building environmental knowledge, we have environmental campaigns, various communication types of activities, and actually having an expert or resources available on site. So in Cēsis, this quote is pretty enlightening. It says, "I remember participants saying, 'Why is this forest so messy?' And then there was a biologist there, so the biologist could explain why it is important and that we are not cleaning it out." And by messy, it doesn't mean that there was that there was garbage, it was polluted, that it was in a natural state, I believe, if I see Bianca nodding. So not a very aseptic forest, but a natural forest with more biodiversity. And then we have facilitating conflict resolution. That's regarding managing the expectation management of different kinds of stakeholders, and the steps the lessons that the planners could take from experiencing that. So we come up with 3 conclusions. The first is planning practitioners' experiences, unveiling inherent tensions between 2 modern planning principles, participative planning and planning for resilience. We have highlighted tensions that are embedded in structural limits for the planner's agency. So that can be related to the planning regimes across the countries, which I didn't delve into in this presentation, but we do recognize the differences between the Nordic countries and the post-socialist countries. And we also have the extension of the planner's role and practices from participative planning towards a transformative planning. And I hope that some people in the audience have an interest in that, because I personally find that very interesting and something that I hope that we can discuss in the next part. So that's all for me. This is my final slide. Thank you.